Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jason the Old Millennial, and special live stream where I'm counting down my top 10 favorite movies of the 1980s, covering the decade of the 80s. I've been doing these live streams covering each decade, starting with the 2010s, 2000s, 90s. Now I'm up to the 80s. Um, and 1980s was the decade that I was born, 1983. So this would be the last decade that I was alive for. Of course, being young in the 80s, I actually didn't watch any of these movies when they came out, of course. So a lot of these movies were movies that I caught up with in the 90s, either on TV or on VHS, maybe that my parents had. So they're all kind of secondhand movies where I got the experience that way. It's funny looking at the 1980s. It's not. It's one of my least favorite decades, which might be surprising because I feel like a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for the '80s and love the '80s, and especially if you're around my age, you might have some nostalgia for the '80s era. I don't have so much nostalgia because I was so young. I felt like in the '80s I wasn't paying attention to pop culture stuff that was going on at the time, or didn't watch any movies that were going on at the time really. Because when I was growing up, I was watching movies from the '60s and '70s. I guess I was watching movies that my parents had, and that was from that era that they grew up in. So I knew more about the '60s and '70s growing up than I knew about the '80s, of course, till much later. Um, so yeah, so surprisingly, like I look at a lot of the '80s movies, a lot of the big movies of that decade. I'm seriously just not a fan of. Um, And when I'm looking at, I don't like this video. I don't have a lot of honorable mentions really from the '80s. I, I think my top 10 is a really good top 10. I mean, there are definitely 10 really stellar movies coming out that decade, and some other honorable mentions that are also very good that barely missed, but really not as much as the '90s and the 2000s. Like I had a ton of honorable mentions for those decades. So this video might not be as long. Hopefully, as some of those, anyways. Also, before I get into it, just to kind of announce some things going on the I'm going to be doing shortly. Next Wednesday, I'm going to be on Jacob Martin's channel. That's what so far uh, we're planning on talking about Doctor Strangelove, the Stanley Kubrick movie from the 1960s. Um, Jacob Martin's going through all of Stanley Kubrick's films, and so in chronological order. So now he's up to Doctor Strangelove, and I told him I was a big Doctor Strangelove fan, so he was gracious enough to invite me onto the show. So I'll be doing that at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time on Jacob Martin's channel, Jacob Martin. So that'd be a lot of fun. That's a really fun movie to talk about, and so I think that'd be a good time. Also, a week from tomorrow, I think it's October 29th, I'm going to be on Adam's What the Gym channel, and we're going to rank all of Ringo Starr's songs that he sang when he was with the Beatles. So if you know, Ringo Starr sang 11 songs total in the career of the Beatles. So not a lot of songs. Of course, they gave him about one, maybe an album. So that's why he only has 11. And so it'd be interesting to go through how would me and Adam rank our top 11 songs of Ringo. Anyway, so we're gonna do that next Friday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Anyway, so those are the things coming up on or not on my channel, but what I'm gonna be involved with in other people's channels. So yeah, Josh. Hey, Josh. Nice to see you. Got Briar. Hey, Briar. I'm doing good so far. Also, SoundLab Studios, I guess he says 3 days early, so he must have posted this 3 days ago. But my favorite '80s films are The Empire Strikes Back, The Princess Bride, and Back to the Future. All three really great movies, and possibly you will see them on my list. So I think you'll enjoy my list. SoundLab, and I'm forgetting your name. I know I should know it, like Garrett maybe. Okay, but yeah, so that's what's going on my channel. Glad I got a couple of people in the chat. Happy for all of you to comment and tell me what your favorite '80s movies are. Probably be different than mine. As I was looking at the '80s, I feel like it was it was a big decade for horror movies because I feel like when I looked at like what were the top movies of the decade, a lot of horror movies came up. And so I don't know if Norn would ever get in the chat because I want to ask Norn. I mean, he probably agree. 80s was a good decade for horror movies. 'Cause I think you have the Friday 13th series going strong, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween is probably making movies. I think Hellraiser came out in the 80s, and that was a big franchise, which they're still making Hellraiser movies. And Halloween movie just came out recently. So all those big horror movies franchises are still going strong, and they're still making out movies. So those did very well. Poltergeist that came out in the 1980s. Uh, Movies I haven't really watched because I'm not a horror fan, so none of these movies are making my list. But I think if you're a horror fan, you'd have a lot of horror movies on your list of the 1980s because that seemed to be a pretty big decade. Horror slasher horror movies, especially, were really catching on. I think at this time, and what we can do in the movies definitely was getting stronger violence and content and Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know if that was going on maybe during this time period, but obviously as decades go on, the amount of violence that we allow in movies are growing and growing, especially from the 70s on. It kind of, you can see what was allowed in movies, the censors definitely pushing the line of what you can do in a movie. And so I think the 80s, definitely horror movies were really getting big because you can really show really violent stuff in the 80s. Um, I'd say another genre that I'm not big on that kind of got big, I think the 80s, is probably the raunchy rated R comedies. Are starting to kind of really, I think, started in 70s and 80s, really definitely were still catching on and were really popular at this time period. And I'm not really big in the rated R comedies, aren't really a big genre for me. So it's another one where I'm like, I'm just, the 80s had some popular movies and genres that I don't watch and I'm not a fan of. So those movies won't show up on my list. Um, Kind of a big decade for, I think, John Hugh. A lot of his kind of teenage comedies were coming out at this period that were very popular. 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I'm not like a big fan of those. I remember watching them when I was a kid and kind of enjoying them, but as an adult, I'm not as a big fan of those type of movies. And I don't have quite the nostalgia for them as some people do. So those kind of movies don't make my list, and I'm not as big on. And I think I find that when I was a kid, and uh, like I definitely was with the kids in the movies. Like I understood their perspective, and I was like, you enjoy the movies where it's like, oh, the adults are stupid, and the kids, they're great, and they're smart, and they get one over on the adults. When you're a kid, they're like, that was pretty interesting because they're like, yeah, I'm a kid. Yeah, adults are stupid. They make rules, and you have to obey rules. Uh, so I think I was kind of I was on the side of the kids during a lot of these movies. But now I'm 39. So now I'm at an age where, like, if I don't have any kids, but if I did have kids, they'd be like teenagers. So I'm like, I'm now the adults. I'm like the dad now. Like, I'm the age of these dads. And so now I'm kind of more perspective, which happens, I think, when you get older. When you get older, all of a sudden it's like, oh, kids are stupid. Now I'm an adult, and I have the perspective of adult. And I'm like, wow, I was a stupid, immature kid. And kids today are stupid and immature. So now I'm on the side of the adults. So now I watch these movies and I just go, man, the kids are annoying. But anyway, so I kind of turned around on a lot of those kind of movies that I used to enjoy as a kid. Now, not so much as an adult. Um, let's see. I know I got some more comments in here. I got Adam from the gym. Hey, Adam. Just talked about our stream next week from tomorrow that we're going to do. Let's see what his favorite 80s films are. Empire Strikes Back. Again, definitely. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yes. Back to the Future. I'm a big fan of 80s blockbuster. That's kind of where I'm going with my list. Like I said, a lot of people are going for the more, I think, horror movies, raunchy comedies, maybe dark dramas. I don't know. That coming out in the 80s. Like, my list is definitely dominated by Action movies. I think '80s was a great decade for action. You had some really some of the best kind of action franchises are starting at this point. Maybe I mean like the Terminator and Die Hard is starting at this point. Lethal Weapon I think is during the '80s. I mean, so definitely '80s was when action movies are really ramping up, uh, and so I think I definitely gravitate towards action movies of this period. The other ones are sci-fi slash fantasy movies I really like during this period. And it's all my movies, almost all the movies on my list are either action movies or sci-fi, fantasy, or a mixture of action, sci-fi. Those are kind of my movies that I really enjoyed in this time period, as you will see. Yeah, Sophie. Hey, Sophie. Hope you're doing well. Happy Back to the Future Day. Yes, and I should also announce on November 5th, I'm going to do a live stream, and I'm going to have my guest is going to be Mike from Did You See That? He's going to come on my channel, and we're going to talk about Back to the Future, the trilogy, and kind of because I'm a big fan of Back to the Future. And if you know Mike, you know Mike's a pretty big fan as well. Actually, pretty huge fan of Back to the Future. So I thought it'd be fun to have him on and talk about one of my favorite franchises, trilogies, Back to the Future. Because if you know, November 5th, that's the day he goes back to 1955. And that's the day Doc comes up with the concept of the flux capacitor, which makes time travel possible. So, so I thought November 5th would be a good time to talk about Back to the Future anyway. So I'm gonna have Mike on that day anyway. So, yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy that, Sophie. Sounds epic. Yeah, so definitely tune in for that in a couple weeks. Uh, and I'm a big fan of animation movies, but '80s is kind of a bad decade for animation. I felt like Disney, it was kind of a dark period for Disney in total. The only notable, I feel like, movie that came out was The Little Mermaid, which obviously was a big hit. And it's a decent movie. Like, I loved it when I was a kid. I would say now it's like an okay movie. It's definitely still a classic from my childhood. But besides that, it was kind of not a great decade. I mean, I think The Mouse Detective is a decent movie. Um, Rescuers Down Under is a decent movie, maybe. But it kind of got killed by the Black Cauldron came out, and that like totally bombed, and it was like too dark, and it kind of was like this period where it felt like Disney Animation was going downhill, and like they might even they were talking about maybe getting rid of animation and Disney because Black Cauldron did so bad. But luckily they were able to bounce back, like I said, with The Little Mermaid, and then of course he had like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and then they became great again. Let's see. Sophie says '80s is my favorite decade, film, TV, music. See, I feel like a lot of people love the '80s. I'm probably one of the unusual ones where I'm like, the '80s is kind of this period where I'm just not as big a fan of movies or music during this period. Just not my favorite decade for some reason. It's a decade I was born in and kind of raised in. But anyway, so get on to some of my honorable mentions. Some that I don't have, I'm going to talk about. I don't have physical copies of. One is Dead Poet Society, with Robin Williams playing a teacher who English poetry teacher at an all boys school, who inspires the kids to dream big. Really great performance from Robin Williams. It's one I need to get. I don't have the Blu-ray or DVD of it at the moment, but one of the best movies are about being a teacher, and I like movies with teachers in them. As you saw, Mr. Holland's Opus was my favorite movie of the '90s. I definitely love a good teacher movie where the teacher inspires the kids and all that. So I definitely recommend Dead Poet Society. It has a great ending to it. Very inspirational. I mean, the whole carpe diem aspect is really great in it. Yeah, definitely, it's a good one. Another great, really good, I think, Robin Williams movie is Good Morning Vietnam. Another one I don't have, but it's one I quite enjoy, and it's one of Robin Williams' best performances. Obviously, he does so much improv. You can tell in that movie, and it's funny, and yet there's some fairly serious moments in the movie too that Robin Williams really showed how good of an actor he is. It was like one of the first movies I feel like where you go, "Wow, Robin Williams can really act." He's not just a comedy guy that just does silly improv or just goes off like he does, which is great. But he shows that he has some range, I think, in that movie, and it's an enjoyable movie as well. Good Morning Vietnam. Another movie I really enjoy that Marvel mentioned I don't have at the moment is On Golden Pond. Uh, Movie with Henry Fonda's last movie with Katharine Hepburn and Jane Fonda, and it's kind of about kind of aging, getting old. Henry Fonda was like 80 maybe or something, or I don't know, he was kind of into his 80s, and kind of talking about it gets harder when you get older, and also about a strange father-daughter relationship that the characters have. And it's so funny because Henry Fonda's real life daughter Jane Fonda plays her daughter in the movie, and you have some great moments between them which felt like they weren't a movie. You felt like you're watching real life. Like Henry Fonda, Jane Fonda really had problems in real life, and they were really working it out in the movie. And so it does get fairly emotional at the end for me because you just know, oh my gosh, this is a real father daughter having a conversation, even though it's a movie. But two great performances. Henry Fonda won an Oscar for Best Actor for his last role, and Katharine Hepburn won her fourth Oscar, only woman to win four Best Actress Oscars for this film. Two really good performances there, and it's a drama, but has some comedy aspects to it as well. On Golden Pond, I recommend. Another movie I actually quite enjoy is Chariots of Fire, which won Best Picture, I think in like 81, 82, somewhere in that area. Kind of not as well beloved or talked about, but I think is a decent movie. It deals with two runners, Olympic runners, one Jewish, one Christian, and dealing with issues that they deal with because of their religious beliefs, I guess, or and of course the Jewish runner is definitely being oppressed a bit, because he's Jewish, and then the Christian runner refuses to run on Sunday because that's the Lord's day, and so he refuses to run in one of the events that he would have won in, but he felt like it's more important not to compromise your religious beliefs than to win an award. And I just love that aspect of that movie. As a Christian myself, I like that idea that you just don't compromise your religious beliefs, even if you get an award for it. Anyway, so I think it's actually a decent movie. Chariots of Fire, I recommend. Great music soundtrack. Dun 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 dun. It's a running slow motion on the beach. Dun 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 dun. Great time, great scene. Yeah. Um, Also throw in Tootsie. I think is a decent comedy. Dustin Hoffman dressing as a girl to get an acting role. Uh, Definitely one of Dustin Hoffman's funniest performances. I recommend that one as well. Anyways, I'll get to some that I actually own. First one I got is The Three Amigos. This is my honorable mentions. This one I loved as a kid. I mean, this was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I watched this nonstop on, I think we had a VHS tape of it. And so I was all in nostalgia for The Three Amigos. I mean, you got three comedy legends: Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, Martin Short. It's like Martin Short's like really first big movie that he was in. Martin and Chase were already big names in comedy at this time. Um, but yeah, I still think it's actually a decent comedy. It's a little silly at times, but I think it's still worth a watch. I think there's some very funny moments in it still. I love the whole idea behind these actors who don't realize they're in a really dangerous situation, and then they realize they're not acting in a role. They're actually in they're actually dealing with bad guys that are trying to kill them. And it's kind of a funny concept in total. And yeah, it still works for me, actually, as a comedy. Let's see. Briar. I agree. Animation was pretty much in a gray area. Land Before Time was my favorite. Yeah, Land Before Time. I know that was that your top movie of the animation movies? I can't remember. I know that was pretty big for you, Briar. But yeah, Land Before Time. I remember. I can barely kind of remember watching that as a kid and enjoying it. You got Ryan. He's watching while working. Thanks for watching, Ryan. Uh, Ryan, I like the big blockbuster movies, so you can probably guess what I'm gonna have on my list already. Um, Actually, and like I said, I really love action movies, and if you know from my list, I love martial arts action movies, and there are some good martial arts movies during this decade. Especially my favorite is Jackie Chan movies. I'm a big fan of Jackie Chan, so I got a couple Jackie Chan movies. Probably my favorite Jackie Chan movie, actually, and a great action flick is the very first Police Story. He did a bunch of Police Story sequels. This is, I think, my favorite of the franchise, but it's a good action franchise, martial arts. Has some really great action set pieces in it. The last one is like one of my favorite action scenes where they're fighting in the mall, and Jackie Chan's just throwing people through glass cases and windows and mirrors, and just lots. It's known because so much glass is being broken at the end of this movie. It's absolutely insane how many people go through glass, and it's kind of fun to watch anyway. So that's definitely have to definitely recommend that one. Another great Jackie Chan movie during his time is called Project A. Another kind of period piece, actually, kind of in China, early 1900s, deals with piracy and kind of deals. He's like a naval officer turned police officer, dealing with like a pirate ring or whatever. And yeah, really fun movie, great stunts. If you know Jackie Chan, not only a lot of action, great martial arts scenes, but great stunt scenes. This has one of the best ones where he falls off of a big clock, um, and really does fall off a big clock in real life because he does his own stunts and he almost kills himself doing them. It's also a very funny movie. The other thing I like about Jackie Chan is his movies are very funny as well. He's really kind of almost started the action comedy genre, I would say. Like if you look, I love action comedies, and so I always look at Jackie Chan as kind of almost the grandfather of the action comedy. Another very silly, kind of stupid, maybe action movie, but I absolutely love it, is Bloodsport. Jean-Claude Van Damme. I used to love Jean-Claude Van Damme movies when I was a kid. If I was tuning in, if I was, going through the channels and I saw Jean-Claude Van Damme, I was like, okay, I'm stopping. I'm going to watch whatever this is because I want to see Jean-Claude Van Damme kick people in the face. It's so much fun. Most of the movies don't work as well today. I watch them and they don't really hold up. But Bloodsport still holds up for me. It's great 80s action fun. Uh, it's this Kumite tournament where what I love about it is you got people from different countries, so you get all these different styles of fighting. And so I love seeing all the different styles go at each other in this tournament setting. Of course, it's Jean-Claude Van Damme's first like major movie that he did, and he looks great, of course. And uh, the bad guy, I'm forgetting his name now. I think his name is Bowl or something like that. Something Bowl. He plays the bad guy, and he's a great bad guy. Like my favorite, like one of my favorite bad guys in movies. And he hardly talks, but he doesn't need to because he just looks so menacing because he's like this Chinese bodybuilder who knows some martial arts, anyways. And so he did some bad guy roles during the 80s period. And this is my favorite of his, playing the character Chung Li. And great last scene between the two in the championship bout. And it's got just one of the best 80s soundtracks, I think. Like it only happens in the 80s, but I love the Kumite song, Kumite, Kumite. I mean, it gets in your head and you're like, yes, like I want to fight somebody. Anyway, so yeah, definitely great 80s action flick. Yeah, Soundlab, 80s, yes. You already said some of your favorite Soundlab, and you'll get into mine here pretty soon. The last movie my honorable mentions is a Christmas classic, one of my favorite Christmas movies, Christmas Vacation. You get a lot of, actually, I think National Lampoon's, I think it's called Vacation or Family Vacation, came out in the 80s. You had Europe Vacation, and then you had Christmas Vacation. Christmas Vacation is my favorite of the vacation movies. It's also the only one that's like PG-13 in this period, as the other two are rated R. But it's a Christmas classic. I watch this every Christmas, and I have a blast with this movie. I love the scene where he's putting Christmas lights on the house. It's just he goes way overboard. I mean, if you ever put Christmas lights up, that's not easy and it takes a while. It would take you forever to put that many Christmas lights on your house. And he way overdoes it, and then he turns it on finally, and it just this huge light and like takes down all the electricity in the town because just too much energy. Love that scene, but yeah, a lot of great Christmas stuff in that comedy in that movie, and yeah, so that's up there for me. Let's see, Sound Lab. Just watched Christmas Vacation last year. It's hilarious. Yeah, absolutely love that movie. Have you seen the remake of National Vacation movie? Yeah, the one with Ed Helms. I'm guessing you're talking about, and Christina Applegate. Um, that remake. I think you're talking about Ryan. That came out, I don't know, 3 4 years ago maybe. I've seen that, and it's okay. I mean, it's definitely very raunchy, R rated. There's some really funny scenes in that movie, so I kind of enjoyed it overall. Love the Four Corners scene where they're at the Four Corners and police officers from all 4 states are trying to get jurisdiction. Very funny scene. Also, when they're uh, yeah, yeah, the sewage scene. Yeah, they go swim. They think in a hot spring, and it's just a sewage water. That's pretty gross. Um, yeah. Also, love the scene where they're kayaking, and the kayak guide is suicidal because his fiance just broke up with him before they go on, and he's trying to kill them. Absolutely hilarious. But yeah, some good stuff there. See Sound Lab reviewing the Who Sings My Generation over my channel tomorrow. Okay. So check out Sound Lab Studios. I think he just started his channel not too long ago. Covered Jethro Tull the other day, I know. Who Sings My Generation? So is that the song or is that an album? Obviously, My Generation is one of my favorite Who songs and one of the best rock songs of all time, I think. Yeah, they get I don't know if it's a Swedish car or a Japanese car. I forget. They get a car that is yeah, talks another language, and also he pushes a button and it makes his seat go backwards, and yeah, it's very funny. Okay, their debut album. Okay, so you're talking about their debut album. Okay, interesting. I have to give that a listen and look at that Sound Lab. Early Who, interesting. Definitely was a big fan from Who's Next, you know, and Tommy, and some of those Quadrophenia, a lot of those albums. But yeah, so thanks for watching Sound Lab. Definitely everybody give him a watch. Yeah, Ryan sub 2 Sound Lab. So we got British Invasion. Oh, from the Who, yeah, part of that good old British Invasion. All right, so we get to my top 10 favorite movies of the 80s. And I'm going with a Best Picture kind of drama comedy with Rain Man at number 10 on my list. Yeah, Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise there. I got the Blu-ray here. I angled it just so it doesn't have doesn't have the light, whatever. Actually been watching this recently on HBO Max. Is on right now, Rain Man, and definitely always been one I've always enjoyed growing up. Catching this movie, of course, Dustin Hoffman, Best Actor, is a Best Picture winner. Um, Dustin Hoffman, I still think, is one of my favorite performances, playing Raymond, who is autistic, and so he definitely has to have these different autistic tics about him, and just the way he has to act, not in a normal fashion, but someone who has that autistic, someone who's autistic and has that to deal with. I think he does a really great job with it. Not that I've been around a lot of autistic people, but the ones I've been around, I feel like he definitely has nailed that character and what goes on there. Someone who can't take change, someone who has trouble with social situations, and the only way to act out is to kind of freak out because they don't know how to deal with stress or deal with change, and so they kind of just freak out. So I think and you notice about autistic people that usually it depends. Autism, there's different lines. There's some on the high end and low end, and I don't deal with autistic people so much, but I deal with dementia people because of my work, because of working in the hospital. I deal with a lot of dementia patients that are not there anymore in their head. They're kind of, their mind is gone. And you definitely see some of this stuff, the fact that they don't really look you in the eye when you're talking to them or when they're talking. And I think Dustin Hoffman totally nails that in this role, where he just never really looks anybody in the eye, or he just kind of looks off and just like says his normal, routine stuff. Definitely not this, or uh, um, he's against certain stuff like flying, or you got to watch certain shows and all that stuff like that. He definitely has this repetition about him. He repeats the same things over and over again. So I think he definitely nails all that. I think, yeah, one of my favorite performances of all time, Dustin Hoffman here in this role. And I've heard some people say that they don't think it's that great a performance, which I never understood. And maybe because it's just one of those things where it's like, maybe too many people have talked about how good it is that there's a backlash against it. And a lot of people are like, oh, it wasn't really that difficult of a role. Maybe he just had to, I don't know how to explain it, but I just heard some backlash against it. And a lot of people say Tom Cruise is a better actor in that role, or a better actor in that movie than Dustin Hoffman. And I don't know. I still think Dustin Hoffman. I still think that would be a difficult role. Like, I wouldn't know how you would come to that kind of role. I mean, obviously you have to do research and probably observe people in that situation and try to kind of mimic it in a certain way. But a certain way, Dustin Hoffman as a character, he has to react to the other actors as an autistic person would react. So I mean, that would that'd be very hard to do. And like, he has that scene in the bathtub where he freaks out when the water's running. I mean, I think that'd be very hard to do. I think he definitely uh, does a good job and makes you feel sympathy for him in a lot of those situations. But yeah, it's a good kind of drama comedy. I love Tom Cruise. I mean, it's definitely early Tom Cruise is really becoming a big star at this point. I think he did Color for Money maybe, and like Top Gun maybe. I don't know if he did that before this, but it was around that time he was doing those movies. And he just really nails this. He's great at being a jerky character. He has a good sense of humor, so somewhat, in being very angry and all that. And I love the fact that Tom Cruise's character in the movie is, yeah, he's kind of unlikable, a real jerk to Raymond. I mean, he's almost kind of abusive to him, and kind of, I don't know, calls him names, and he grabs his neck real hard to say, "Hey, stop doing that," which of course Raymond can't stop doing it. He's, autistic. He can't stop it. And so he's very not understanding of Raymond and all that. But then during the movie, he starts actually getting close to Raymond, actually starting to, it's his brother. So he starts forming a relationship with him. And I like that character arc of Tom Cruise's character of being from a jerk to being someone a little bit more likable and nicer. Uh, and the way he treats his brother a lot better towards the end, and even says, I'm glad I have you as a brother, I think he says. And, as he leaves, and there's definitely a closeness where before I think he couldn't touch Raymond. But then at the end, I think they hit their heads together kind of, and that's the best they can do, because it's hard to get close to somebody who's autistic, but you can tell that he's starting to, Raymond's character, that character is starting to, be close to somebody, which is hard for them to be close to somebody and have a relationship and, have some, I can't think of the word, but I hope you know what I'm talking about. Having some kind of, relationship with somebody. And so I like that whole character arc between the two and how they kind of form a actual brothership at the end. Yeah, like in Sophie says here, Rayman made me cry, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, it definitely gets very emotional at the end of the movie, I think, when they have to take Raymond away. And I think, at that point, Tom Cruise's character generally loves his brother and wants to be part of his life. So that's a great moment at the end. I said Tom Cruise is really funny in the movie, and there's some great lines in it. Like, is it Kmart sucks or something like that, or stuff like that. Judge Wapner, definitely Judge Wapner. I gotta watch Judge Wapner. Uh, but I love the scene where he's told that he's his dad has died in at the beginning of the movie, and they're reading out the will, and his dad is rich, and all the money's going towards somewhere else, not to him, and he's of course upset that all this money isn't going to him, and so uh, he oh, the one thing that he gets a car, and then he gets the rose bushes or something like that, and he's like, what? I get the rose bushes? I definitely got the rose bushes. I mean, the rose bushes are mine. He keeps repeating because he's really upset that he only got rose bushes, and he's like, but the rose bushes, those are mine, aren't they? Those are definitely mine. Like he obviously does not care about the rose bushes, but he's being sarcastic and very funny scene. But yeah, you're welcome. We'll do clap sometime. Sure. Sound Lab likes to do. He's a music guy. He has a lot of vinyl, I believe, and definitely, yeah. If we can find something to talk about, we can talk about it, collab together. See, Briar, sounds interesting. I've worked with autistic people before. You definitely need a lot of patience. Yes. Okay, so you totally understand then, kind of where that character's going. Then, yeah, yeah, I need a lot of patience. And it's very frustrating, probably working with someone like that, I imagine. And like I said, it's easy to you have to do the same thing, same routine. Any change can freak them out. They just can't deal with it because of the way the brain works. But anyway, yeah. So Raymond, number 10 on my list. Number 9 is one of my favorite Star Trek movies, Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home. It's my favorite of the original cast movies. They did 6 movies together. So this is the 4th out of 6 movies they did. And the second one, directed by Leonard Nimoy. He played Spock in the movie. He did The Search for Spock in this one. Uh, I'd say it's my second favorite overall. First Contact with the Next Generation crew is my favorite Star Trek film. I think I had an honorable mention in my 90s decade. But yeah, the more I thought about it, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm a big fan of Star Trek in general, mostly the Next Generation, but the original crew, I enjoy I watch a lot of their episodes, and I watch all their movies. In fact, this last year or so, I went through all of the Star Trek movies and I ranked them. I did a video ranking all the Star Trek movies, so definitely something I've always enjoyed. I haven't kept up with the new Star Trek. I know there's new Star Trek shows. I just haven't kept up with. I have a lot more nostalgia for Next Generation because I grew up watching that, and then of course I also grew up watching the original Star Trek series because my parents were fans of the original series when they were growing up. I haven't really been a fan of a lot of the other Star Trek series so far, so but definitely one of my favorite just because I think it's probably the funniest of all the Star Trek movies. So I do love the comedy aspect of Voyage Home. There's a time travel aspect, and I love time travel in movies and ideas of going in the past to fix the future. Like I love those concepts, and so that's an interesting idea that they go back to whatever 1980s something whatever in San Francisco to get 2 humpback whales to go back to the future because there's an alien race that talks to humpback whales, and so in the future humpback whales are extinct, and so when this alien race comes and they don't find any humpback whales, they destroy the planet. So I mean, it's kind of a strange concept, but yeah, it's great because there's a big stakes. It's you need to get these humpback whales, or the planet will cease to exist. All human life will basically be killed. So it's kind of a race against time type movie, which I like because it gives you something. There's some kind of rush, like we need to get this done. And it gives it great stakes, like we can't make mistakes, or the fate of the world is on our hands. I like those kind of ideas, or in movies. I think really makes it better. And I like the movie because, of course, the crew is great. I don't know if you don't watch Star Trek. I'm not sure how you take these movies, but being somebody who's watched the episodes and kind of watched all the movies, I know the characters, and I love the characters and the chemistry between them. Honestly, especially like Captain Kirk and Spock, and also McCoy, Dr. McCoy. Those three usually have great chemistry together, those 3 actors and the characters. And so they're always fun to be together. And even some of the other characters like Scotty and Sulu and Chekhov, and of course Michelle Nichols, who just passed away, played Uhura. Um, those are all also good, kind of more. I don't want to say side characters, but not as big as maybe the top three. But I like this movie that they all kind of have their own role in the movie. Kirk and Spock are going off to find the humpback whales. McCoy and Scotty go off to try to find. They need to get some like materials so they can build a something to put they need a tub and of water to put the humpback whales in to put them in the ship to get them back to the future. So they're looking for materials to build this tub, whatever you want to call it. So they're off doing that. Chekhov and Uhura are off to find a nuclear vessel, as Chekhov says. He's trying to find a nuclear missile, I guess nuclear energy, because the ship can't run unless it has like nuclear energy or something like that. So they're off trying to find nuclear warhead or whatever. And so I like that they're all, and Sulu's trying to find a helicopter because he needs to fly the humpback whales into the ship or something. Anyway, so they all have their own missions. And so I love that they all have important missions, and they all get their chance to shine in the movie. So I enjoyed that they did that. Anyways, and then I like how at the end, there's always like, okay, we get the humpback whales, or we have to go find humpback whales. So we got to find them. We got to put them in here, and then we got to figure out how to travel back to the future. And then something goes wrong, and the doors won't open or something. Anyways, so every time they solve one problem, another problem comes. And I love that in movies when it's like, okay, we think we solved the problem, but oh no, here's another problem. And so it makes the stakes even, worse, or makes it like, you need to hurry, it's a race against time. So you're kind of on edge. You're like, oh, can they do it in time? So that definitely, I think, makes the movie even better. And so the last part of the movie is so great because so many things go wrong that they have to get over and fix. And I think the Klingons are after them as well. So they have to deal with the Klingons, I believe, and all of this anyway. So it's a great ending to it. And overall, just a real fun movie. I love Kirk and Spock as they're going through, because it's a fish out of water tale of like, here's all these people from the future, and now they're in San Francisco in the 1980s, so they don't know the customs, and they kind of stick out as a sore thumb. And so there's a lot of comedy because they don't understand things like money, because money doesn't exist in the future, evidently. So they don't get the concept of having to pay for things, I think. And they don't understand the concept of computers having mouses, because they just talk to computers in the future. So there's a lot of funny stuff like that. I think my favorite is Kirk and Spock try to get on a bus, but they don't know what exact change is. What is this? What is exact change? They don't understand money. And then Spock says, I have a question. What is the purpose of foul language or something like that? Because people are cursing at him, and only Spock would be interested in what the purpose of using bad language is. Like, and Kirk has to explain it. Well, it emphasizes, what you're talking about, or something like that. And so they have this whole conversation about why people use bad language, anyways. And I think it's absolutely hilarious. Like I said, because only Spock, who has this logical brain, wants to understand the logic behind using foul language in your speech, anyway. So, but yeah. Love all that. Number 8 on my list is the only one I don't own at the moment. It's one I need to get. Movie I love, and that is The Princess Bride. And I know SoundLab already talked about it. That was one of his favorite movies of the 80s, and I totally agree. I should say Sophie says she hadn't seen Star Trek. Yeah, Star Trek is definitely, more of a niche, I guess, genre, sci-fi genre show that maybe not everybody's seen. But if you see Star Trek, that's a great Star Trek movie. But I recommend it to anybody, even if you haven't seen Star Trek. But yeah, so that's Princess Bride. I absolutely loved Princess Bride as a kid, and still to this day, just have so much fun with this movie. I don't really have comedies in the 1980s. This is maybe the funniest movie I think maybe out of what I have. Though there's some other movies that maybe have some comedy in them. But yeah, it's a funny movie. It's this fun fairy tale movie. It's got action, it's got comedy, adventure, romance. So it has a lot of great aspects to it that I really enjoy. I also enjoy that at the beginning we have Peter Falk, who's the grandfather, telling the story to Fred Savage's character who's sick, and I love, and it's funny. It's like it's this these two characters and they're and he's telling the story, and the whole movie is the story that he's telling his grandson. But then we have the grandfather and grandson comes into the movie every once in a while to go, oh yeah, to remind you almost like, oh yeah, we're reading a story. He's reading the story to his grandson. Anyways, and it has absolutely this really cool. It's like almost a minor uh, story amongst this movie. It's mostly about the Princess Bride, but I love how this you have this character, this arc between these two characters, the grandfather and the grandson, where you start with the grandson is like, oh, I don't want grandfather to come over. He pinches my cheeks, and then the grandfather comes over and is like, oh, I'm going to read you this story. And the grandson is, of course, playing video games. And he's like, oh, a story? Like, I don't want to, who cares about books, kind of thing. And then when he finds out there's romance, he's like, what? It's a kissing book? I don't want to, it's a boy. I don't want to hear about kissing, and stuff like that. And so you get this thing where he's not enjoying, he's dreading his grandfather to read him the story. And then as they come in and out of the story, you kind of get this sense that the grandson is starting to enjoy the story, of course, because there's action, there's adventure, there's some scary moments. And so he's actually kind of getting into the story. And at one point, he's like, well, you're getting a little excited. Maybe we should stop reading and maybe I'll leave and I'll come back another day and we can finish the story. And this grandson's like, no, finish the story now. So he totally changes from dreading the story to actually getting into it. And then by the end of it, he absolutely loved the story. Even the kissing part, he didn't mind. And it actually gets me I get a little, what's the word? Uh, Choked up at the end because there's a lot of great lines in this movie. One of my favorite is, as you wish, as I forget his name, the main guy in the movie, he tells the girl, Princess Buttercup, whatever, that as you wish means I love you. But he couldn't, I guess, say I love you, but because he was the stable boy. So every time she told him to do something, he would say, as you wish. And that was the same as saying I love you. And so at the very end of the movie, when the grandson says, oh, come back and read me the story again. And the grandfather says, as you wish. And it's like, oh, that really gets me because the grandfather's saying I love you to his grandson. And so it's like, oh, that's like a great moment that I wasn't expecting. So I love the whole story. That's that storyline. But then the whole storyline with now I don't know, I can't remember his name now, but Carrie Ells' character, Wesley. That's Wesley, yeah. The whole Wesley's great character. Um, I love and then I love Montoya. What's his name? Ignito Montoya. Of course, he has that great line. My name is Ignito Montoya. I can't say it. Uh, you killed my father. Prepare to die. That line is such a great line that he repeats. In fact, the actor who plays that character, I think, should have won an Oscar or at least be nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I think he gives such a great performance. Padikin, I believe his name is. Comments are turned off. Oh, sorry. I got a message from Mike saying comments were turned off. I'm reading the comments here. So I don't know. Sorry, I'm back. Uh, um, Mike says my comments are turned off, but I can see people commenting. See, I got Ryan here and Sound Lab. Okay. Oh, it's Mike's hotel Wi-Fi. Okay. Okay, Mike. Uh, Sorry about that. The Princess Bride, as I'm talking about, is my number 8 movie on my list. Top 10 favorite movies of the 80s. I was talking about Wesley, and I love Andre the Giant, of course, and Fizwick, whatever. I forget that. It's like the leader. Unconceivable. Great line. Wallace Shawn, I think the actor is really great. A lot of comedy there. Love the whole sequence. The fight scene, Mandy Patinkin, I think I was talking about. Great performance. Should have been nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. I thought maybe it was stand out in the whole movie. The fight scene between them two is Vizzini. That's a Vizzini. Sound like corrected me there. The whole fight scene is it's such a great fight. Sword fight scene is one of the best sword fight scenes ever in movies. In fact, I was watching their Watch Mojo. Watch Mojo is this channel. They do a lot of rankings, top 10s and top 20s, and they did a top 20 best like sword fight scenes, I think, or something like that. And this fight scene was number 1 on Watch Mojo. It's the best sword fight scene in movies. So definitely it's got to be up there as one of the greats. And it's just a fun scene. And then I love the fight between him and Andre the Giant. Fizwick, is his name Fizwick? Someone named Fizwick, right? I love that whole scene. And then the fact that those three become kind of friends during the movie and they kind of work together. In fact, my favorite part of the movie is probably when those three are together. They're very funny and they work really well. And Andre the Giant, yeah, Fezzik, he's not necessarily an actor. He's of course a wrestler, and he does some acting in wrestling. But I don't know if he would work as an actor, but he works for this movie. Like Rob Reiner, who directs the movie, definitely did a good job directing Andre the Giant here, and his lines work really, really well, and his delivery is great. I really enjoy everything he does here, and yeah, it's a great fairy tale, like fun of action adventure movie that I absolutely love, and just so many great lines throughout the movie. Definitely it's always one of my personal favorites. The Princess Bride, number 8. Okay, number 7. If you know me, you know I love The Karate Kid, and Cobra Kai is one of my favorite shows on TV right now. And I love the nostalgia that it brings through all the Karate Kid movies. The original is definitely my favorite of the Karate Kid movies. I mean, can't beat it. Mr. Miyagi, one of the all-time great characters. One of my favorite characters of all time. Pat Morita, nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, which I'm very happy for because he definitely deserved it. He's so memorable in the movie. And it's funny, as a kid, I loved Karate Kid, of course, when I first saw it on TV or whatever. And as a kid, I think I liked it more because I liked action movies. I love martial arts action. So, of course, a movie with karate in it, it's got to be a good action movie. So I think as a kid, I loved it because of the action, because of the karate. I always loved the scene where Johnny and his gang, Cobra Kai gang, get Daniel up against a fence, and he's about to almost murder him. He's going to kick him, hurt him pretty badly. And then Mr. Miyagi jumps in and takes them all out. That was always like one of my favorite scenes as a kid. I don't know why I loved Mr. He's like this old man. Loved watching him beat up these teenagers. Always enjoyed that scene a lot. And so I enjoyed, and then at the very end, you have all the tournament fighting. I think I always enjoyed that as a kid. As I've gotten older, though, it's not so much the action, but it's the relationship between Mr. Miyagi and Daniel that I love the movie so much. Because you have Daniel, who doesn't have a father, and he's getting bullied, and he really needs a father figure in his life to help mentor him through this hard times. And he finds that in Mr. Miyagi, who helps him with the bullying problem, and they really kind of grow this father-son relationship that I absolutely love. But also not for just Daniel, but Miyagi also used to have a son. You find out his son died when he was young, and so he doesn't have. So you don't realize Mr. Miyagi kind of needs a son, and so it not only provides that part in Daniel's life, but also it fits, this hole in Miyagi's life that he didn't, I don't think, realize he needed to have the son, somebody to teach and to mentor, and to give advice to. And he finds that in Daniel as kind of this almost son figure, and that really makes him whole. And so they form one of the best relationships ever in movies, I think. And I absolutely love what they do here with them. Uh, Absolutely love. He's going to teach him how to do karate, but he's just making him wax on, wax off. One of the famous lines from the movie. Paint the fence or paint the house. And he's teaching them, and he's getting all frustrated. Like, you're not teaching me any karate. I'm just doing chores around your house, which I'd be mad too. I'd be like, I feel like I was being had too. Like, you're just making me do chores. And then that scene where Mr. Miyagi says, it starts, it's showing him when he attacks him. Okay, show me paint the fence, and he blocks it, and show me paint the house, and wax on, wax off, and all this stuff. And then you find out that all of those movements that he was doing when he's doing those chores were actually karate movements, and so more of defense blocking movements. And so with that scene where he's like, he just and he's just starting going crazy on him, and he's just blocking it, and then he's just like this realization of like, oh, you've been teaching me this whole time. Like, it's such a great scene. And Daniel realizes, oh, he's not taking advantage of me. He's actually is teaching me. And I just need to trust him, Great scene. Another great scene, like I said, Mr. Miyagi, you don't really understand what his relationship, he talks about his father. Of course, one of the big things is like his father taught him how his karate, and so it's almost like this generational thing where his father teaches son karate. It's like this family tradition. The father, his father taught him karate, and he was going to teach his son karate, but his son died young, and so he never had a son to teach karate to pass down this tradition. And so having Daniel there is like, here I have the chance to pass down my family tradition through Daniel. Anyway, so that's very important, I think, to Mr. Miyagi, that he gets to do that, gets to pass down the family tradition of karate, the Miyagi Do karate, whatever. And so that's I love that. And I love the scene where you find out that he gets drunk, and you find out that he had a wife and a son, and they died. And he's kind of a drunk mess at that point, because every year he kind of mourns over their death. And it's probably the scene that got Pat Morita's Oscar nomination. Great scene. I love Daniel after that. Daniel kind of bows as he helps him to bed, and he bows, and it's like, okay, now Daniel realizes, that he needs to work hard and, provide this for Mr. Miyagi. And then the very last fight scene, of course, so iconic, the crane kick. But I love how it ends with the crane kick, winner, and then the music is so great. Music comes up, bum, 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 and it's like everybody's excited, and then we get him looking over the side, and we get a close up of Mr. Miyagi smiling, give him a smile, and then that's the end. I mean, perfect ending to the movie. Success, victory, great relationship between him and Mr. Miyagi. It says it all in that last shot. Anyways, but yeah, it's definitely a movie. It's not just for the karate aspect, but just for the emotional relationship parts. I absolutely still come back to the Karate Kid. And I said, I love Cobra Kai as well. It's one of my favorite shows out there. That still brings on the tradition of Karate Kid and relationships and stuff. So anyways, that's number 7 on my list, of Karate Kid. Number 6 on my list. Just give me a second. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Someone mentioned this movie in the comments, and I think it's mentioned a couple times, and I have to agree with them. My number 6 movie, which is maybe a little bit low on other people have this higher on the list, but it is The Empire Strikes Back. Here I have the Star Wars, the trilogy here, but from this, it's Empire Strikes Back, episode 5. Number 6 on my list. I mean, how can you not have Empire Strikes Back on your list? Like, as you see, I do like more of these blockbuster movies, and this is nothing gets bigger than Star Wars. I mean, started out in 77, and we had two in the 80s. This came out in 1980. And then, of course, Return of the Jedi comes out in 83, my birth year. So this is definitely, like I said, like I was going to say, if I'd say there's like three franchises or two, at least two, maybe three franchises that really dominate my list of the 80s, and Star Wars is definitely one of the big ones. That's one of my favorite franchises of all time and trilogies. This is the second one. It's considered the best Star Wars movie. A lot of people put this number one on their list. Actually, spoilers, this is actually my second favorite Star Wars movie. I have one more, that's just a little bit higher on my list. But yeah, great sequel, great Star Wars movie. Brings back all the characters. Han Solo is still one of the best characters of all time. Love the relationship between him and Princess Leia, and how we're starting kind of more. They just kind of fought all the time in the first movie, and here we're kind of getting this kind of romantic. Of course, how could you not love the bad boy? Princess Leia. Starting to get into. She's still kind of trying to be standoffish, but you can tell something's going on there between Han Solo and Princess Leia. But how could you not? Han Solo was so cool. How could you not fall in love with him? And it's Harrison Ford. I mean, he's just the best. So I love all that. Love it begins with the Hoth, the Battle of Hoth, I believe it is, the frozen planet. Great little action sequence there with the big AT-ATs, I think they're called. You got all that. And then you have another great character coming in, Yoda, another one of the best Star Wars characters, one of my favorites. And you have the whole Dagobah scenes where Luke is training to be a Jedi. Those are really great. Frank Oz is doing the puppetry and the voice of Yoda, I believe. And Yoda, I love Yoda as a puppet. Like, I think much more than a CGI character. Like, I feel he's more real when he's a Muppet or whatever. I don't feel like he's so much real when he's a CGI character who you can actually see him walking. And even his facial expressions are come through really well in the movie. Because I love some of his lines, like, Luke says, "I'm not afraid," and Yoda goes, "You will be, you will be." And it's kind of almost a creepy like line reading where I'm like, I'm kind of scared of Yoda the way he says that. It's a lot of great stuff like that, and of course, he has one of the best probably lines in Star Wars history. Do or try, do or do not. There is no try, or something like that, which is a line that's repeated over and over again. You also have the Han Solo line, Prince Leia, "I love you," and Han Solo, "I know," which I don't know if that's a good line to say to somebody who says "I love you." Like, if I said it to my wife, I'm not sure how she would react to that, but it's still a great line and iconic, and so Han Solo like, I would say. But yeah, it's a classic Star Wars movie, action, comedy, great flight scenes. Got one of the best um, uh, lightsaber fight scenes between Luke and Darth Vader. Love how they're in the dark and you see the lightsaber, and then and of course has one of the best lines or twists in a movie ever. With and I'm spoiling the movie. Hopefully, everybody knows what happens in this movie. But the whole Luke, I am your father. I mean, one of the top lines of all time. Top 10, top 5 movie line ever. And watching it, it didn't shock me because I watched it as a kid. I think I already knew that he was his father at that point, even at that time. So I would imagine if you watched it in the movie theater, how shocking that would be to have the bad guy be and today you get those kind of moments all the time. So it's not shocking when it's like, "Oh, I'm your so-and-so relative." I was like, "Oh, okay. I kind of saw that coming." But I feel like Star Wars Empire Strikes Back probably maybe was the first one to really do that. And so it was kind of original and fresh and shocking to go, what? The evil bad guy is the father of the good guy? Like, I don't know. That was pretty, I don't think anybody saw that coming. It would be my guess. Unfortunately, I wasn't there when it came out or saw it when it came out. See what Ryan says. One day I'm going to watch all the Star Wars films. I get so much crap for never seeing them. Ryan, I just, yeah. Anytime someone says I haven't seen Star Wars, I'm like, are you joking? Like, it's the biggest movie franchise of all time. But Ryan's one of those guys. He's seen about every horror movie ever made, but he hasn't seen Star Wars. So, but yeah, definitely you got to check out Star Wars. Ryan, though, I don't know how good it'll be now since it's been done to death, or how much you know. If you know much about Star Wars already, how much it's going to be surprising. But yeah, definitely one of the great. Is a childhood favorite of mine. Still one I love to go back to. The Empire Strikes Back, definitely one of the top movies of the '80s and sci-fi movies of all time. So yeah, The Empire Strikes Back comes at number 6 for me. Oops, sorry. Sound Lab says not a big fan of Lucas added impact or improvements. Okay, so I was like he corrected himself. So not a fan of Lucas added. Yeah, I agree. I hate the fact that they added so much through the like. I have the Blu-rays, and the Blu-rays are the. Cause I remember when they put them out in theaters again before the Phantom Menace came out, I think. And I went and saw all three movies in the movie theater in the late '90s, which was kind of cool to go back and see the movie on the big screen for the first time for me. And they added a lot of scenes to the movie, and yeah, and they changed some stuff around, and I've heard they've done more. Like every time they come out with a new like Blu-ray or DVD series, Lucas is always changing things around or something. He's really into changing things in the movie, which is kind of annoying because there's some stuff in the originals that because I grew up watching the original cuts, and then when I watched the I don't know different cuts of the movie, I'm like I don't remember that or like or he had some CGI in there, and I'm like oh that just looks too CGI. Like I'm sure Sound Lab you're probably talking about like there's this Jabba Hutt scene where Jabba the Hutt shows up in the first movie, and you're like Jabba the Hutt like walk or slithering around, or like I don't know that doesn't look that great. There's a scene in Return of the Jedi, I guess I'll talk about it now, but where these characters start singing a song in Jabba the Hutt's palace, and I was like, I hate this scene, and these characters they're so CGI'd and didn't need it at all. So I agree with that. I had a VHS tape as a kid. Yeah, I used to watch the VHS tapes as a kid, and then, like I said, in the '90s they changed it all and they added stuff. Of course, there's a whole who Han Solo shot first. You know, that's the big controversy. Han Solo shot first in the original, but then when Lucas came back out with it, he had Guido, whatever his name is, shoot first. You know, and so they didn't like that about what they did with the Han Solo character. Yeah, it's all stupid. I agree. I wish they could come out with something with the original cut. You know, now Disney owns it, but I have a feeling they're not going to. We're always going to get these different cuts, unfortunately, of the movies. But yeah, sorry, that's a big tangent on Star Wars. Okay, number 5. Like I said, Star Wars is definitely one of the big franchises that dominates the '80s for me. The other one would be Indiana Jones. So, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones movie, is number 5 on my list. Favorite movies of the 1980s. Came out, I think, 81, somewhere around there. Again, Harrison Ford. I mean, he's Han Solo and he's Indiana Jones. I mean, just the two coolest characters of the '80s. I mean, Harrison Ford was king of the '80s, in my opinion, because he did 3 Indiana Jones movies and 2 Star Wars movies during this time period. But yeah, Indiana Jones, again, a big blockbuster, Steven Spielberg movie, one of my favorite franchises, and at least two of the Indiana Joneses I'm a pretty big fan of. I know they're coming out with a 5th one in a year or so. I'm not so sure they need to keep making them. But yeah, it's one of the best action films I think of all time. Steven Spielberg is so good at action, and he's so good with thrillers. You got that opening scene with in the temple, whatever, in the big boulder, being chased by the boulder, iconic scene. That just starts off the movie. And you love Indiana Jones. It's such a great character. He's got the action, he's got the great look. I mean, the hat, the leather jacket coat thing, the whip. I mean, oh, so cool looking, and in action scenes are really well done. And he's also got this, of course, Harrison Ford. He's just got a great charm about him, charisma about him. I just love that character. One of the best characters of all time. I know Adam from What the Gym, I think, had Indiana Jones as his favorite character of all time or something like that. We did something about that, and I know that was like his number one. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's one of the great characters. He's got a great sense of humor about him too. There's a little bit comedy in the movies, a little darkness to it, and I love the whole concept of this guy's archaeologist, and I love that aspect of like a religious. This is the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, so you got this religious artifact that you're looking for that has like a supernatural aspect to it. So I love, like I said, this was action. It's also a little bit of sci-fi to it. So I love, like I said, action and sci-fi are like my two biggest genres of this decade. And so, um, so yeah, this definitely, it just hits me right where hits me right in my heart of like movies I love. I love this type of genre type movies. I love the fight scene in Nepal where you have the girl that becomes kind of his girlfriend in the movie, which I'm forgetting her name at the moment. I think the actress name's Karen Black, maybe, or something like that. But I love that, the shootout, the fire, put his head on the uh, on the bar, and then the fire's coming at him. He has to get out of the way. I mean, so many great moments in that. And then later on, you get the one of the most iconic scenes where guy with the sword comes out and he's like really good with the sword, and Harrison Ford just shoots him, and then Marion Ravenwood, thank you, yeah, Marion, great. I like Marion. Which Marion was in all the movies. She's in the first and fourth movie, I know, but yeah. So, but of course, love that scene, and it's like I would have loved to see a good fight scene between the two. They probably had a good fight scene choreographed, but because Harrison Ford was like sick that day, they decided to just have him just shoot him, and that'd be the end of it. But it's so great. I love that scene because just yeah, why not shoot him? If you have a gun, why get into a fight? Just shoot him. If you bring a sword to a gunfight, I mean, you're going to lose. And what makes it so great is how he shoots him, and then he just kind of looks away and just kind of walks off and like doesn't give it a second thought. And as an audience, you're like, oh my gosh, he just shot him, but he's already past that. Anyway, so great stuff there. Like I said, yeah, just a fun action adventure movie. I also love the scene where he's driving the military truck, whatever, and one guy comes in and throws him through the front window, and he has to go. He's on the front, holding on for dear life, and then he goes underneath the car and like has to, as the car's dragging him, he's going, down goes out the back end, and he gets the whip out or something like that, and he's being dragged, pulls himself up to the car, to the back of the truck, then moves all the way to the front, and then throws that guy out. I mean, one of the best overall scenes, action sequences. I absolutely love how they did that. Gosh, I got my first bot, whatever. Now I got to figure out what to do with it. How do I? And I didn't want to do that. Maybe that'll do. Okay. Hey, good. I got my first troll bot, whatever, with my live streams. So now I got that going on. But yeah, just if you like action adventure, it's one of the greatest. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Spielberg's a genius movie maker, film director. See, Ryan, I got the first three on Steelbook. Need to watch those too. So, Ryan, you got to watch Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I mean, you're missing out most of my movies of the 80s here. My top movies of the 80s are ones you haven't seen yet. Heard the fourth is terrible. Yeah, the fourth is definitely a down point of the series. And probably why they're making the fifth one, to try to get out the bad taste of the fourth one. Very disappointing, the fourth one. I will agree with that. Let's see. SoundLab says Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade are the best. I agree wholeheartedly. Those are my two favorite. Let's see. Apparently Harrison Ford was sick that day of shooting, and the gun thing was added so they didn't have to shoot a fight scene between him and the swordsman. Yeah, that's what I've read. And Makes for a really fun scene though. It's absolutely hilarious, and I love that they did it that way. I know I'm famous now. I got my first bot. I don't know what to do with it. I put it on timeout, I think, which I don't know if that was the right thing to do. Somehow I have to get rid of these bots, but see, Briar, you know, you made it when you got a troll account. Yeah, finally, I got one of those troll accounts. Um, I was afraid that was going to happen eventually, but yeah. All right, so down to number 4 on my list. Maybe a little bit surprising. Um, if Ryan knows I like Sylvester Stallone. He mentioned it on one of his channels, and I do. Okay, thank you, SoundLab. I need to look into how to get rid of bots, or if anybody knows how to get rid of bot, feel free to. But I have First Blood, which might be kind of, I don't know, it seems kind of high maybe, but I absolutely love this movie. And I did a video not too long ago ranking I watched all, I think 5 Rambo movies, and I did a ranking of them. And this was number 1 on the list, of course, was First Blood. Stallone classic. I mean, loved him in the Rocky movies, and now with the Rambo stuff. Great character, great performance from Sylvester Stallone. And First Blood's not really an action movie. There's really, let's see, so you just block them. Yeah, I got to figure out how to block them, I guess. I think I put them on timeout or something. I was trying to figure out how to do that. But Rambo, of course, is one of the great action franchises. First Blood's not that much action. Only like one person gets killed, and it's kind of almost an accident. So it's kind of interesting that when you think of Rambo, you don't really think of First Blood. I think you think of Rambo 2, which I actually enjoy Rambo 2 as well. Not nearly as good as First Blood, but Rambo 2 is also a kind of fun action film. And it's definitely the one that you think of where we have the shirtless, Stallone is, totally, stacked, and he's shirtless, and he's got the big gun. He's got the long hair and the red bandana, and he's shooting that gun with one hand. I mean, that's the Rambo you think of. This is not that Rambo. It's much more of the psychological, movie dealing with PTSD and dealing with, the after effects of being in war and how people treat you and all that. And I don't know, I just love the idea of this movie that this guy is just minding his own business, and this sheriff decides that he doesn't want this guy in his town, so he ends up arresting him, which is like he didn't really do anything really against the law, but he just too power hungry, I guess. He's got too much power in this little town, so he decides to arrest him, and he freaks out and beats up some police officers and escapes, and then he's on the run in the mountains and the forest kind of area. And he's on the run. The police are chasing him, and I love that he's an expert at jungle warfare. So the forest is that's his, that's where he's most dangerous at. And I love about the Rambo character compared to other action characters is his thing is if he gets into a jungle area, I mean, game over. He knows how to hide. He knows how to survive. He's a expert survivalist, I guess, and knows how to use the jungle to his advantage, or forest or whatever. So I love that when he gets in the forest and they come after him, and he builds booby traps, and he kind of comes out, and he's good at camouflaging himself, and he kind of comes out and takes them all out. And that last scene where he just comes out of nowhere and has that big old knife up to the sheriff's Taggart or something. I forget his name. He has that knife up to his throat, and he's like, I could have killed all of you if I wanted to, but stop, pushing me, he's telling him because he's like, I've been through war. I've been through the worst. I was a POW. I was tortured. You don't want to mess with me. I'm the wrong guy to mess with. I love that kind of character, the attitude of man, you mess with the wrong guy. Anybody else could would do whatever, but I'm the one guy you don't want to deal with, and saying if you want a war, I'll bring a war to you. And I just love that attitude of the character. I don't agree with beating up policemen. I'm not for that at all, but I'm for a guy that, if you wrong him, he's going to get back at you. I enjoy those kind of characters anyways. And he doesn't, and then I forget names, but the colonel that comes in, which I'm forgetting his name, but the actor is really good. Um, Richard Crenna is the actor. He plays like the Green Beret colonel that comes in. He's so good, and I love the lines like, "If you're gonna go after him, just remember one thing: bring a lot of body bags." It's to say like you're gonna have a lot of people get killed if you keep going after this guy. And I love the scene between him and Rambo. You got to stop this, and they drew first blood. And they're all dead. His whole team is dead, and all this, and that's a great scene where it's kind of like you see he's been pushed too far, and he's now in full Rambo mode, and so now you're in trouble, and he's going after the sheriff, anyways. But yeah, just I don't know, I just love the whole psychological drama of it, of this guy dealing with going through the Vietnam War, and then he comes back to America and he's being treated like crap, and it's like, man, I just put my life on the line for this country, and now come back and I don't have any rights in this country. Like, I don't have the right to go into a town. Like, I can't just walk into a town and get something to eat. That doesn't seem fair. So I just love that whole aspect of the character, and being pushed too far. And that last scene is so great. Sylvester Stallone's performance is really good, I think. I love that Richard Crenna's character is telling him, you need to kind of you're surrounded, and we don't want you killing police officers or hurting anybody. You need to turn yourself in, kind of thing. And he says, "It's over, Rambo, it's over." And Rambo goes, "It's never over." And he has like this great freak out scene where all this, and I think about the character, he's somewhat of a quiet character. He doesn't really emote too much, and so that last scene he kind of lets out all the emotions that he's going through, and I think it's so good. How he, you asked me, I didn't ask you. I mean, like, you drafted me into the war. I didn't want to go to war. You drafted me into it, and I'm doing the best I can. And now I come back, and I was driving $1 million equipment. I was using $1 million equipment, and I came park cars, and I love the whole, going through like, what he's going through. Anyways, such a great scene, great ending to the movie. I love that he doesn't get killed, or he doesn't kill anybody really, but just goes into custody, which he needs to go. He needs to be arrested because he did hurt some police officers, so he definitely belongs in jail. But yeah, I'm sympathetic towards that character. Let's see, Sound Labs, the Briar CD Showcase. I like your Creedence Clearwater Revival video. Rankings close to mine, so there's Sound Labs giving some love to you, Briar. All right, I'm almost done with my list. I'm gonna get my top 3 favorite movies of the 1980s. Number 3, again, going back to Star Wars, and it is Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, if you can see that. Empire Strikes Back, I already talked about. Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. Not surprising, a lot of people are like, it's definitely Empire Strikes Back. And like, some people act like you're crazy if it's not Empire Strikes Back, but I'm sorry. It's always been Return of the Jedi. It's always been my favorite. And I think it's because it's the third of the trilogy. It ends the trilogy. The bad guys finally defeated. The good guys win. I love that, the whole closure of the movie. I think that's why I enjoy it so much. Because I love the ending of it and feeling some accomplishment of like, all right, we won, in Sound Lab. What? Return of the Jedi better than Empire? Yeah, I'm sure people think that. Like, I'm sorry. I love the Empire. It's number 6 on my list. Return of the Jedi is number 3. It's just a little bit better. I like it just a little bit more. Love the whole Jabba the Hutt scene at the very beginning. It doesn't have a lot to do with the movie. It's just we need to get Han Solo, but it's a fun sequence. The Rancor scene is great, and still it's kind of a scary monster. It's like a stop animation. I think it's more scarier than a CGI monster. So love the whole sequence. Love the Sarlacc pit scene where he's fighting back, and I said this before, and sorry I have to repeat this, but Princess Leia in that gold bikini, I mean, it really did it for me when I was a kid, and it still does it for me. That's all I'll say about that. But anyways, yeah, great sequence. And then we get the whole, what I love about the movie is, I don't know if the movie's done it better than this movie, where you get three different scenes happening at once, and they're just edited. I think it's really wonderfully edited and cut, where you're going through. All right, we got Luke dealing with Vader and Emperor Palpatine, and we got that whole scene there, and then we cut to Han Solo and Princess Leia and Chewbacca and all them trying to get into the moon base, whatever. So to get the blow up this moon base, so the ships can get into the Death Star, the what do you call it? Whatever you call it, that will keeps the force field. Get rid of the force field so that the ships can get in. So that's an important part. So they need to get in there. And then you got what's his name? I'm forgetting names right now. But then you got the guy in the Millennium Falcon, Billy D. Williams. I know someone tell me. I know what the character is. I just can't think of it. Lando Calrissian. You got Lando Calrissian in the Millennium Falcon, and he's waiting for the force field so he can go in. So you got this great, aerial battle sequence, and that whole sequence is great. But I love how it cuts between all three. All three scenes are really good and all important. They all play important parts. So I don't know if the movie has done it better than that movie, to be honest. The way it cuts between three different scenes going on at the same time, and how they edit together. I mean, very wonderfully done. I think it's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Now, talk about the Ewoks. The thing that people hate about Return of the Jedi is the Ewoks. Let's see what SoundLab says. To be honest, Return of the Jedi was my favorite as a kid because of the Ewoks. People hate the Ewoks, and that's the reason why people don't like Return of the Jedi. And I've seen people put this as like one of their least favorite Star Wars movies. And I like all three. The first original are all good. This one's just really special to me. The last one. Ewoks, I agree. I liked as a kid. As an adult, I don't hate them. They're okay. I do understand, though, why people don't like the Ewoks. The thing I don't like about them is that scene where they're fighting the Empire or the Stormtroopers, and they're like winning. And it's like, when I watched that recently, I was like, okay, that is so unrealistic, because the Stormtroopers have armor on, they have laser guns. The Ewoks just have rocks and sticks and rope and no armor. I was like, yeah, the Stormtroopers should just mow down the Ewoks. I mean, realistically, they should just be able to shoot them all and be done with it. So that is very unrealistic. I agree. Like, that was not done well. Overall, though, I don't mind the Ewoks that bad. They don't ruin the movie for me, obviously, like they do for some people. But yeah, that's what I say about the Ewoks. But yeah, what I love most about this movie is the Luke and Vader. That whole storyline, I think, is really, really good. I love just the whole idea behind. You just find out in the last movie that Darth Vader is his father, and even though he's never met, his father basically, or didn't grow up with his father, just because it's his father, he loves him because it's your father. I mean, and so he has this love for him that he's willing to sacrifice his life in order to try to bring Vader to the good side, which like never happens. People go to the dark side all the time. And it's almost this thing where it's easy to go to the dark side, but it's hard to come to the light side. Almost impossible. Like, it never happens. So what he's asking for is very hard, to ask Vader or Anakin Skywalker to come back to the light side of the Force. Most likely it wasn't going to happen, but he's willing to go in and do everything he could to save his father. And I just love that aspect of the story and the character, that he loves his father so much that he's willing to put his life down in order to save him from being the dark side. And then I love the fact that Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, shows no love. Of course, can't see his face, but he shows no love towards anybody or anything. He just, of course, dark side is all full of hate and anger, and yet he still finds that he has love for his son, who he doesn't know. But there's just this connection between father and sons, or any family member, that you just can't break. And so I love that aspect of it, that this great father-son relationship, kind of not relationship really, but this love that they have for each other really saves the day. And I love that last scene where they're fighting, and then Emperor Kursk comes in, and I get very emotional actually during that scene. I think it's a very emotional moment, and through all the Star Wars movies, I don't get a lot of emotional moments, but this is definitely one of them, where Emperor Palpatine is, shooting electricity at Luke and is killing him, and Luke is, in pain. He's going, "Oh, Father, please!" He's begging his father to, save him, to help him, and Darth Vader's conflicted. And I love the fact that you can't see his face, but yet you still understand the conflict that's going in between them just by the way he kind of turns his head. And it totally, I don't know how he does, the actor does it perfectly, I thought, where, he's sitting there, you see him staring at his son who's being tortured and being killed maybe, and you see him looking at him. You see him turn towards Emperor Palpatine. He turns back to Son. And you just tell by the way he turns that he's thinking in his mind oh, like this is drawing a line. I have to intervene, even though it goes against everything, all this dark side that I've been loyal to for decades. Uh, I'm at a breaking point where I can't take seeing my son being tortured and killed, and to seeing him kind of go look between the two. And then finally, no, he had that big no scene, no, and he grabs him and he throws him. And man, I get kind of real emotional during that sequence. Even after all these years, I've seen it so many times, I still kind of get emotional, going, oh man, good for Vader, and good for Anakin, killing his master in order to save his son. And I think that's a great moment. And then, of course, also the moment where he takes his father's helmet off, and his father sees him with his own eyes for the first time, and he says, I'm going to save, he says, go on. He says, I've got to save you. And he says, you already did. I mean, it really gets me when I see that scene. I go, oh, he saved his father. And then the very last scene where they're celebrating, and Luke looks off to the side, and you get uh, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, the Force Ghost, two important mentors of his. And then you see Anakin Skywalker appear as a Force Ghost. So you go, I mean, it's such a great moment to go, oh, he came back to the light side. He's good. He turned to the good side before he died. So now he can be a Force Ghost, So it's almost like, I guess, if I can say it from a Christian aspect, it's almost like he was going to hell, but Luke saved him, and now he's going to heaven. I guess that's kind of feeling I get, to kind of give an analogy of why I love that so much. I was like, oh man, he saved him from eternal damnation almost, and because of his love for his father. And so I love that last scene, seeing the three, Force Ghosts, and just love the whole idea of they beat the Empire. It's such a great feeling. Sound Lab, you can definitely tell what he's feeling under the helmet in the scene when the Emperor shocks Luke. Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. So I'm not the only one that thinks that, because yeah, I think he does such a great job of showing that emotion without seeing his face. I mean, just amazing. All right, going to my top two. Okay, you're a Christian too. Cool. So you hopefully agree with me on some of the stuff I'm saying. Okay, top two. Going back to another the franchise I've talked about already. Love this franchise. My second favorite movie of the 80s is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which a lot of people would put Raiders of the Lost Ark as their favorite Indiana Jones movies. I actually like this movie a little bit better. Again, great character, great. I love, and as you know, I don't have the second movie. Temple of Doom, it's a little dark. It's a little gross. I don't like the bugs. I don't like the scene where they're eating things. And it has two of the most annoying characters I think ever. The Kate Capshaw character, and then the Short Round, I think, are two annoying characters. So, and it deals more with this cult pagan thing. I like it better when Indiana Jones is dealing with more Christian artifacts. I think are more interesting. So I like the first one deals with the Ark of the Covenant. The Last Crusade deals with the chalice that Jesus drank at the Last Supper, and they're looking for this lost chalice or whatever. And so I like that they're bringing in the Christian aspect to it. And it's kind of this, of course, there's no supernatural power behind it, but it's, fun for a movie like this to put some kind of, supernaturalness to it. So I like that they're looking for this very important lost artifact, in history. So I love that into it. Um, Great opening sequence with River Phoenix playing young Indiana Jones and being in the circus train, being chased. Great sequence. And then the last, and I love the transition, just amazing transition between at the very end of that sequence, the one guy puts his hat, the Indiana Jones hat, on top of the kid, and the kid's face kind of goes down, and then when it comes up, it's an adult Indiana Jones. So I love that transition from kid Indiana Jones to now we got the adult Indiana Jones, and he's on this ship that's uh, like a big, that's during like a storm, and it's just a great opening sequence again. I love these great opening sequences to Indiana Jones movies. They do a really good job with it. At least the first three, I would say. But anyway, so you get that, and then we get to this whole story, and I love the whole travel aspect, and um, and looking forward and being chased by bad guys, and the thing that really probably puts this movie over, I think it's the funnier movie of the two. Um, Two Raiders of the Lost Ark. It has really good funny moments in it. I love that thanks to Sean Connery playing the dad. But I love their relationship. I think what I love about this movie the most is Indiana Jones' relationship with his father. You find out they kind of have a bad, estranged relationship. They don't really get along. They haven't been in touch for a long time, and they didn't have a good relationship growing up. And so then I love that Sean Connery's so good as the father. Indiana Jones Senior, I guess, or I don't think it's Indiana Jones, it's something else. Uh, but he calls him Junior. He always calls him Junior. Dad, stop calling me that. You get that. I love their whole chemistry together. It's so great. Like I said, it's very funny because the father's not an action guy. He's very smart. He's like a genius too, just like Indiana Jones at archaeology stuff and history and religious artifacts. But he's not a fighter, and so it's kind of funny. But his son, Indiana Jones, is a really good fighter and all this, and so that's kind of a surprising moment for him. But I love that they have this bad relationship, and throughout the movie, they of course come out with a great relationship at the end where they really love each other. Again, I'm talking about father-son relationships. I do love a good father-son relationship in a movie. Of course, because I have a dad myself, and I get that relationship. But yeah, so I love that they kind of go from being estranged, not really fighting and not liking each other, to finding that great relationship between each other and really finding that love for each other. I think at the end of the movie. So I do love that whole aspect that really puts it over the top for me. Is one of my favorite movies of all time. And Spielberg's such a genius, like I said, when it comes to action and adventure and thrillers and I don't know, suspense. I guess I should say suspense. He's just the best. He's one of my top directors of all time. As you can probably see, I got I have two of his movies on my list. Uh, I'm not as big fan of some like ET, but definitely love some of these these Indiana Jones movies. Of course, I absolutely love. Um, and Spielberg does such a good job. I love this. My favorite scene is when his father's in a tank and he's riding a horse trying to get onto the tank and trying to save his father, get him out of the tank. And there's these Nazis. Nazis play good bad guys. Can I say that? I think everybody can agree Nazis are good bad guys. So I always love killing Nazis in scenes in movies. And so it's great when he gets onto the tank and then he's almost falling off the tank. And then all of a sudden you hear that bump, a bump, bump, bump. You hear that Indiana Jones music. Of course, John Williams, one absolute greatest musical score writer. Love when that musical score pops in and then all of a sudden he kind of gets a second wind and gets back on top of the tank. And then I love when he's fighting this Nazi general guy and the tank is going off the cliff. And so he needs to get off the tank before it goes off the cliff. And so when the tank goes off the cliff, you don't really see what happens to Indiana Jones. And everybody else is looking over the cliff thinking Indiana Jones is dead. It's a great scene. Very funny, good action too. But the editing is so good. Like I say, Spielberg's so great. Like the way they edits the action sequences, so exciting to watch. But I love when they're looking over the edge and they think he's dead. And then Indiana Jones is and Sean Connery's all very choked up because Indiana, I thought we had more time. He's really sad because his son is dead. Indiana Jones climbs out from another spot, comes up from behind them, doesn't know what they're looking at, so he looks over the edge, not realizing they're looking for him. So now he's looking over the cliff, looking to see what are they looking at. And then very funny. And then Sean Connery, his father, sees him. Son, I thought I lost you. I mean, great emotional scene between father and son. And Sean Connery gives a great performance here. And then Indiana Jones, he's tired. He almost died. He's fighting a Nazi on top of a tank going off a cliff. And so he sits down because he's tired. And his dad says, Junior, why are you sitting down when we're so close to the end? And it's like, dude, man, give me a rest. I just almost died going off a cliff, So that's a very funny sequence. But it's funny, it's emotional, and it's great action. I mean, come on. I mean, how could you? Only Spielberg does so well in those areas. Sound Lab. Sorry, bumping my thing. Temple of Doom is also a prequel to Raiders. Yeah, that's true. It's a prequel. Before he really kind of believed in anything. And yes, the Nazis are a better enemy for India than the thuggy cult. That's what I thought. I guess Nazis are in Raiders and in this one. So yeah, Nazis really good bad guys. Didn't care for the whole cult aspect of the Temple of Doom. And then I guess in the fourth one, it's more like the Russians maybe or something. Because they're dealing more with the Cold War, and I think in the fourth movie. Anyway, so yeah, absolutely love this movie, Last Crusade. Number 2 on my favorite movies of the 1980s. So we're going to get to number 1, my favorite movie of the 1980s. If Mike from Did You See That has watched this, hopefully you'll be very happy to say my favorite movie is Back to the Future, the very first one. This is the trilogy set. I love all 3 movies, but definitely the first one. One of my favorite movies of all time. Top 10, 5-star. Absolutely love this movie. Easily my favorite movie of the 1980s. Like I said, me and Mike are going to talk about Back to the Future on my channel on November 5th. And so you'll hear a lot about how much we love this movie and the trilogy and all. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? It's one of the best scripts, one of the best concepts. Again, I love the sci-fi. Like I said, I love sci-fi in this era. It's got a great sci-fi concept of time travel, where he travels back to 1955 on accident and sees his, and the whole idea is he sees his parents when they're high school kids. And the idea of like, what would it be like to see your parents as teenagers? Because it's hard to imagine your parents, because your parents are always old in your mind, because as a kid, you always grew up with your parents being adults. So you're like, I can't imagine my parents being teenagers, but they were at one time. They were just like you as a teenager. And so it's kind of a great concept. I mean, one of the best concepts is that he accidentally stops his parents from meeting. And then because his parents don't get together, he just erased his own existence. I mean, so the stakes could be higher. It's one that, that's what I said. I love a movie with good stakes, and I love a movie that has, a race against time. Like, we need to get this done quickly, or everything's going to go, or it's going to be too late. So, like I said before in the other, in Star Trek, I love that aspect of the movie. It's like, okay, we got to get my parents back together, so I'm alive in the future, and we only got like a couple days to do this. And so I love all that. Wonderfully paced. It's really, I say it's a sci-fi movie. You can say it's a sci-fi. You can say it's action, adventure. There's some good adventure aspects to it, and I almost want to say it's a comedy. I think it's a really funny film. Especially Doc. I love Great Scott and 21 gigawatts. I love Christopher Lloyd's performance is so good, and stuff like that's heavy. Why is it heavy? Is there something wrong with gravity in the future? So many great things like that. Absolutely love. I love Doc. And I love Marty McFly is great, and I love the relationship between the two. It's a really good friendship. It's like actually one of the top friendships I think in movies. And you see that at the very end, a very emotional kind of ending to it. But yeah, it's a really fun movie, of course, and I love Biff is one of the all-time great bullies of all time. And why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? What you should say, make like a tree and leave. But he can't. He's so stupid. He can't even get the concept of an insult of bullying somebody. But and also George McFly is a really funny character. I am your density. I mean destiny. He has this really quirky sense of acting that really works for the character. I think, in my opinion. Uh, and I love him and Marty together. Him trying to help his dad. So good. Of course, he had the aspect of his mother falling in love with him, which is like this really creepy creepy part of the movie. The idea is like, oh my god, my teenage mom's in love with me, and like, how do you deal with that? Because it's really gross and creepy, and like, oh my god. And to find out his mom was like a horn dog in high school is really funny because his mom's so proper in the future, in the present day, 1985, and see that his mom was actually really boy crazy and all this was kind of funny. And she drank and smoked and all this. And in the present day, it's like, we never chased boys back in my day, And it's like, yeah, you did, Mom. Uh, so that was all fun. It was a bit controversial because the whole mother, and that's something I'll hopefully I'll talk more about with Mike when he comes on my channel. Because that's the interesting aspect of the controversy of incest, of the mother falling, liking the son, but not knowing that's her son. I don't think it's not a problem for me because she doesn't know it's her son, and that's kind of the comedy aspect of it. But I kind of see, yeah, that's a little. Now with Game of Thrones, I mean, this is so light compared to what we see today in movies and TV and all that stuff. But yeah, um, great moment. Uh, then I just love the whole ending of like, we got to get parents together at the dance. We need to hit this thing at a certain time when lightning hits the clock tower, so you can send me back. And so all this stuff happens. Plus, he wants to tell Doc that he dies in the future. So much going on there. Of course, him playing Johnny Be Good is a great scene. Him going overboard the electric guitar, and it's a song that wasn't invented yet. Great sequence of the dance. My favorite sequence of the whole movie, why I love it so much, is George is kind of a bit of a coward, bit of a strange character. Um, and when he has to go pretend to rescue Lorraine from Marty, but then it turns out it's Biff, the bully, and bully, and he's like going to like rape the mom or whatever, rape Lorraine, and he's like, "You get your hands off her." He's always shaking all the time. And he's like, "Why don't you get out of here, George?" And he's like, "No, Biff, you get out of here." And he does that whole thing. And I love that he finally stands up to the bully and to save Lorraine. And Biff has him in that laugh. Oh man, so good. He's laughing, and the music is so tense. Love the music. And you see the close up of the fists slowly getting into the fist, the hand going, and then it close ups on Biff as he's like laughing. Then he stops, and then boom, hits him and does like a whole 360 or 180, knocks him out with one punch. Love that scene. It's one of the best scenes of all time. It's a scene that every time I watch it, it gets me. Every time. I just love that he stands up to the bully, knocks him out, and then that kind of saves the marriage or the relationship, so that Marty gets to survive in the future. I mean, so it's a very important scene for the survival of him, and just the way it's directed, the music. I mean, perfect scene. And Alvin Silvestri's music is great. He did the Avengers, and I think he did Forrest Gump. I mean, one of the great music score people, Alvin Silvestri. And a bum 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 bum. I mean, so good when that music kicks in. And then the end, when he has to go back to 1985 after changing the future through the past on accident, and that scene where he thinks Doc is dead, and then it turns out, and I'm spoiling the movie, I'm sorry if anybody hadn't seen it, but Doc ends up being alive. I mean, very emotional sequence. It gets me emotional every time I watch it. because it generally is a really good friendship between the two. And the idea that, how sad he is that Doc is going to be dead, and that the regret that he wasn't able to save him, and then the fact that no, he's still alive. I mean, that's such a great scene. Also, I mean, and then I just love the aspect at the very end. His parents are better because he went to the. I mean, he went to the past on accident. He almost destroyed his life, but somehow he made everything better. And I love that. It's one of the great endings because he comes back and it's like, oh, his parents are better. His dad's like more confident. Biff is this loser guy that's washing their cars. And he even inspired his dad to be a writer. And so his dad's like a sci-fi writer. And his siblings are more successful. So I just love the aspect. It's like, oh, he accidentally made his life better. That's such a great idea. It's great ending to one of the best movies ever, in my opinion. Like I said, so funny, great action adventure. Loved the element of time travel. My favorite movie dealing with time travel, in my opinion. Let's see. Sound Lab, November 5, 1955. That's when Dog invented the flux capacitor. Yep. That's why I'm doing a video on November 5th to talk about Back to the Future. Important date in history, day we invented time travel. Ryan, I've seen the first two. I've at least seen the first two. Oh, talking about Back to the Future. Good. You haven't seen Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but at least you've seen some Back to the Future. That's very good. I think all three movies are really good. I recommend all three, but the first one definitely is just an absolute classic. Right, George punching Biff is one of the most satisfying scenes ever. Yeah, exactly. Since I was a kid, I absolutely love that scene. Yeah, it's so satisfying to get back at, because Biff is such a terrible jerk. Like I said, one of the worst bullies in movie history, I would say. The only person I'd say is worse is Bowers from the It movie, chapter 1 or whatever. He's a little more sadistic, and maybe there's some other ones I'm not thinking of, but Biff is definitely one of the greats. Bully jerk characters that you hate and you love when something bad happens to him, like when he hits a truck of manure, and I hate manure, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so yeah, number one favorite movie, Back to the Future, one of my favorite movies of all time. There's no doubt. So again, love a lot of sci-fi action adventure movies are definitely my top genre of this decade. But yeah, so thank you for everybody watching, commenting. It seems like we agree mostly on most of you agree on the movies. Some of you that watching this at some point, tell me what your favorite 80s movies are. What did I miss? Let's read your comments. I'm sure there's a lot of different opinions on the favorite movies of the 80s. I'd love to see what everybody else thinks. So, but thank you for everybody. And this tops up my 1980s. Next, I'll cover the 1970s in probably 2 weeks. So thank you, and I hope everybody has a really good day.